So you downloaded the brushes.pdf. You can drag it into Photoshop and just use the default settings and click OK. And it is going to open this blank file. It's basically got some headings on it and that tell you what we're going to do, and then it's just divided into 8 parts. It's pretty simple and straightforward. First, we want to make sure that we have the brush tool and not the history brush tool. They are two completely different things, okay? Make sure you have the brush tool. Now, I also want you to know that the brush tool and the pencil tool, are very similar in how you can use these options up here. And really the only difference is as you see this pop up, the pencil tool has hard edged brush strokes, whereas with the brush tool, you can create custom brush strokes. So that's what we're going to work on. Now, if you don't already have it open, you are going to need your brushes and brush settings panel. Brushes and brush settings. If you open one, the other one typically opens with it. With the brushes panel, I do want you to notice that there are some things here that are important. One, right here, it allows you to look at the brush strokes, the samples by brush name, brush stroke, and brush tip. So here is your brush name, brush stroke, brush tip. That's what that means. Okay. So anytime one of these gets turned off, you know that you can go to this little menu at the top and get it. Also, when we did one of our previous exercises, we went ahead and loaded the legacy brushes. But if you don't see legacy brushes down here, then I want you to go ahead and go to that same little pop-up, go to legacy brushes, and it says that it's going to restore them or add them. Go ahead and click OK. They appear here. There's a lot of different ones that for whatever reason Photoshop 2020 decided not to make automatic in here. So again, there's lots of different ways that you can choose color in Photoshop. One of them is down here with your color picker. You have the foreground color and the background color, and that's important that you understand that there are two colors there. Anytime that you want to go back to the default colors, you just click the little one here. And if you ever want to flip-flop what's in the foreground and background, you hit the double arrow there. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to look at is the diameter. So we're going to come up here, or actually you can go to either place. The options up here and the brushes over here are very similar, but I'm going to choose a hard round brush. And what that means is that the hardness is set at 100%. Had we chosen a soft round brush, notice that the hardness is set at 0%. Okay, so for diameter, we are simply talking about the size of the tip. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with making this 10 pixels. PX stands for pixels. Okay, and just go ahead and you can make a squiggly line moving up the box where that is. Then let's make one a little bit bigger. Let's go ahead and choose 50. And the reason we're doing this is because a lot of times as you start working with the brush or the pencil, you simply choose the pencil or the brush tool and you don't bother to look at all of the settings that go with it. So I want you to know that there are vastly different settings and you need to make sure that you go in and check them. I'm going to do one here at 200-ish, just so that you can see. Okay, so I've got 4 brush strokes there, all with different diameters. Okay, so very important. Now, I wrote roundness here because if you look here, it's called, we're talking about soft round and hard round. But if you look up in the menu, it's talking about the hardness. So I want you to understand why I wrote roundness. I'm referring to the same thing. So let's go ahead and get a diameter of 25 and set the hardness at 0. I think I want 25. Actually, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Let's go ahead and make it 50. Okay. So if you look at this, you're going to notice that the edges are soft. It's like they're being blurred out along the sideline. That is what a soft, round brush does. So we don't always have to have it at 0. We don't always have to have it at 100. We can obviously put it somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to choose 50, and you should be able to see a difference in the edges. And then finally, with it up at 100, we should see a hard edge along the side. Okay, so vastly different in the effect that they have on your drawings. So then we have what is called opacity and flow. They are up here in your options. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to go ahead and choose 25. We know what it looks like at this point when we have full 100% on both opacity and flow. Okay, that's what it looks like. But what if I reduce the opacity to 75%? How much of the difference are we going to see? Not much. You can see it a little bit. It looks a little less black. Well, if I keep going, whoops, and this time choose 50, you definitely can see a difference. And where you're going to notice it the most is if you have to put or brush over something else. So if I drop it one more time to 25 and brush over top of this, notice you can see the 25, but notice how, I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. Notice the intersection points. So it allows you to see what's underneath it too. I'm going to do one more. Oops, I must be typing backwards because that was not actually 25, that was 52. Hang on, let me go back in my history and get rid of that one. I can't seem to type straight. 25, there we go. And definitely different there, but you can see the other things through it. Whatever is below it, you can see. Now, if I went ahead and made this 0, it's going to tell me that it has to be between 1 and 100, and it switches it to 1, okay? So if I do a 1, you really can barely see that at all, and really I have to zoom in quite a bit for you to notice a little faint brush stroke there. Not much, okay? So then I'm going to go ahead and change my opacity back to 100% for now. And I'm going to reduce my flow to 50. Okay, so we saw it with 100 over here, but here is a flow of 50. So it's not that dissimilar from what the opacity is. Okay, and again, if I reduce it more and I go to 25, okay, it's a little darker than this one is, but it's still there. And it's also going to tell me that I can't do 0, so I put it at 1. You can see it a little bit more than you can the opacity, but let's let's drop this to 33 for each, okay? And now look at what we have, okay? So sometimes you use them together. There's no magic number that makes something work with opacity and flow, but it's something that can help your shading with certain projects to make a subtle shade to give something some form or three dimensions, okay? And then you also have, next to the flow, you have this airbrush. And it allows, with an airbrush, it can build on top of each other. So if we painted it, right now it looks the same, but now when you paint over it, and if I increase my brush size, you can see it painting over it, and it's just getting thicker and thicker where I paint it. Okay? Now, the other reason, besides being able to shade something that we want to know about opacity and flow and airbrush, is because sometimes you go in to use the brush and the settings have been changed and you forgot about it and you wonder why it looks the way it does. Always make sure you go back in and check your opacity, flow, and airbrush settings. There are more up here, but for right now, that is what we are going to stick with.